2018 is almost at a close, and it's been a great one. We've seen Switch mature as a platform with a great breadth of games, some incredible PS4 exclusives like Spider-Man, plus Xbox One X rise in prominence as a 4K console. At Digital Foundry, it's been a great challenge covering everything, and hopefully you've enjoyed our work. But before we look ahead to 2019 on a personal note, I figured it'd be nice to reflect on some of my most memorable games of the year. It's a chance to look back at some of the major games and see where they stand now the dust settled. Now, I'll almost certainly be missing out on some major and brilliant releases here. You'll have to forgive me, it's hard to see and play everything, and I'm looking forward to hearing your say in the comments on what makes your list. But here goes, my personal top 7 games of 2018. In 7th place is Octopath Traveler. It's one of the biggest technical curiosities of 2018. I love the way the game blends visual styles, both old and new, to create a truly unique take on the classic JRPG. Okay, the story does take a while to kick into gear, and so it really comes down to how much you're enjoying the presentation and the music in the meantime. On that front, the idea is simple and pretty well executed. You get a blend between the classic 16-bit top-down look and cutting-edge effects like bokeh depth of field and full 3D lighting. The result is quite unlike anything I've seen in recent years. Octopath's real success is its ability to deceive you with its Unreal Engine 4 tech, the illusion it creates of something entirely different. All the modelling is in full 3D, but with texture mapping to give the effect of 2D sprite work. With that in place, the magic can really happen. Complex lighting during spells, mist, snow, and even light shafts can be woven into the rendering pipeline. It's something that wouldn't be possible in a straight 2D game, and the idea works brilliantly. My main reservation is that it doesn't feel like a big budget production, since all the major cutscenes play out using those basic sprites. It's nothing like the 32-bit heavyweights, where the big story beats would be marked by nice FMVs. It feels a bit rudimentary in this sense. Even so, for anyone looking for a kind of throwback to JRPGs of the mid-90s, this is a great nostalgia trip. Technically, it's impossible to place it in any exact era, though maybe it's closest to the style of games like Xenogears on the original PlayStation, when the 2D sprite work of the Super NES made way for full polygonal 3D elements. Octopath Traveler feels like something that could fit into that transitory period, but with a lot more bells and whistles. The only failing to match it is it's a locked 30 FPS with some uneven frame pacing, and I didn't enjoy how erratic that makes the game feel. Still, it doesn't detract from what Square Enix achieves. It's an easy entry into my top games of the year. At 6 is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now this I didn't see coming. It's an absolute sprawl of a game with one of the most beautiful worlds in the series. Between the water caustic effects and those broad pans across Grecian islands, I love that so much of the tech Ubisoft has built over the years gets a kind of best of moment. It ties together neatly, and for how vast the world is, the micro detail holds up reasonably well too. The fact we're more in RPG territory than ever before is a big plus in my book as well. I much prefer to see those lovely numbers, Monster Hunter style, with each strike of a weapon. Pack that in with the branching dialogue trees and skill sets, and it's easy to lose yourself here for a good 40 to 50 hours. Now, not everything holds up to modern day standards. Even after covering the game months ago, I remember parts of it, like the textures, looking a bit dated. Maybe next generation will see a complete reinvention of the Anvil Next engine, but for now, this is still a real delight to play. Number 5, Dragonball Fighterz. Launching at the start of this year, Dragonball Fighterz turned out exactly as I'd hoped it would. With developer Arc System Works at the helm, what we ended up with is a fluid 3 vs 3 fighting game, but also a game that's authentic to the look of the anime. Now, I'm a huge Guilty Gear fan. X2 is still my favourite fighter of all time, and so there was some peace of mind that Arc would nail this. Guilty Gear Xrd already showed the team experimenting with non-photorealistic rendering on Unreal Engine 3, and so Dragonball felt like a perfect fit for that same approach. Cell shading is used here, but time is also spent making sure the lighting and perspective of the models carry the imperfections of the anime too. It's a delicate balancing act, but it's the best representation of the anime I've seen so far in a game. While I did enjoy Dragonball Fighterz enormously, there was one gripe. The characters do feel great and responsive, but many of them have very similar movesets. Especially compared to the wild differences you get in Guilty Gear's roster, it feels like the Saiyans are all variations of the same idea, and for me that cut into the game's staying power. Still, the core thrill of playing as that type of character is enough to make it a great experience, and given the success of the game, no doubt Arc will keep expanding the game's options. In 4th place is another Switch game, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and EEVEE, a remake of sorts to the classic Pokemon Yellow on Game Boy. This won't be everyone's cup of tea, I realise, but it hones in on the hook of that classic game very effectively. Long-time series fans will miss the more traditional elements to combat, and reject the focus on Pokemon Go style gyro controls when capturing new creatures. But that aside, it's a superb way to revisit a mid-90s phenomenon with updated visuals. There's a charm in its simplicity. You only have to focus on the original wave of Pokemon, which is perfect for anyone just trying to get back into the series. As for the visuals themselves, well, it's a huge leap over 3DS certainly, but to be critical, it is lacking some character. Shading is very basic, and shadows are particularly rough up close. There's a straightforward look to its design, and you get a sense Switch can do more than this in the follow-up, projected for next year. So there are reservations there, and especially given it's just locking at 30 FPS anyway. But at its core, it still worked as an initial foot in the door from developer Game Freak to get to grips with the hardware and hopefully tee up something more extravagant. Even so, I loved it. At number 3 is a complete change of pace. Forza Horizon 4 is the best exclusive game I've played this year on Xbox One, and it makes the best case I can think of for getting an Xbox One as well. The console really needed this, after the cancellation of Scalebound, the delay to Crackdown 3, and the unoptimized launch of State of Decay 2, I was dying to see X hardware show off what it could really do. The time and energy Playground Games put into even the basic Xbox One version is commendable, adding 4 seasons in the UK and a swathe of enhancements since the last game. But the limelight is certainly stolen by X, with its option to run the series at 60 FPS on console for the first time. Yes, you sacrifice the 4K presentation to make that happen, but it's one of few enhancements on Pro or X that I can say is truly game-changing. And then there's the game itself. The Horizon series is unique in the racing game space right now, in that it twists the real into the surreal. I love the way it takes the cutting-edge Forza tech from developer Turn 10 to create a kind of driving fantasy. Every moment feels like a celebration, full of colour and excitement, and moments that are designed to put a smile on your face. Racing a hovercraft through the English countryside is my fondest memory of the game, but it's crammed full of them. There really isn't much I can nitpick with Horizon 4 as a whole, besides being forced to drop to 1080p when I want to enjoy the action at 60 FPS. I'm just glad I now have that option. Maybe in a patch we can get dynamic res in there to get the best of both worlds. Either way, it's an amazing example of what I want to see more of from X-supported games. At number 2 we have Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Treyarch snuck in with its own take on Battle Royale this year via the Blackout mode, and it actually turned out quite brilliantly. It defied expectations, with the team's well-versed engine pushed to render out a single 100-man map, rather than tighter, more controlled arenas. Visually speaking, it's not the best the series has ever looked. There is a plainness to the aesthetic. Sacrifices are made here in the micro details to make this macro level experience possible at 60 frames per second. But it works. The balance feels right in terms of the visual versus frame rate trade-off, it's effective and pop-in is minimal. The surprise is this works at all. It's a visual upgrade over games like PUBG, certainly on console, while the feedback on guns works to the series' strengths. Every weapon has a satisfying tactile feedback, a real crunch that I miss when playing games like Fortnite. The only shortcoming? Well, it needs more. After the first month of play, the single map we're using did need a more dramatic refresh to keep me engaged. If there's one thing Epic Games gets right with Fortnite, it's the retheming of the world in each season, and there'd be no shame in Treyarch pinching that same idea. Surprisingly, there's even a split screen mode here, which is a rarity for modern day consoles. The sad fact is though, it's not very playable if you're looking for a locked 60 FPS experience, though it is cool it even made the cut. And going into 2019, I really hope we see more of it. The solo experience is where it's at then, especially on Xbox One X or PC, where you're getting the best resolutions and frame rates. Definitely one I'm hoping to return to. In first place is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Even as a latecomer to 2018, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate gets my personal nod as the best game of the year. It's been a good 17 years since I first played Melee on GameCube, and like many growing up around that time, it was the game to play with a close group of friends. Booting up Ultimate today feels like returning home to find your old room redecorated. Mechanically, it's as sound as it always has been, especially with the GameCube controller in hand. Even so, it's impossible to overlook the extensive work made to its visuals. Looking at a stage like Corneria, A melee classic missing from the Wii U version, it's hugely satisfying to see it finally get a next-gen overhaul. This is exactly what I wanted to see. What shocks me most is that Ultimate didn't settle for a straight conversion of the Wii U game. This isn't a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe situation, though I could easily have accepted that. Instead, Sakurai and his team dug deep to update the graphics, at times quite radically, with new lighting and a push more towards cel-shaded effects. It marks it as a proper sequel, rather than a simple repackaging, and that means a lot. Okay, it may not be the best looking game on the list, the shadows are a little rough, and the more I play big 8-player games, the more I see those pesky frame rate drops from 60 FPS. But that doesn't detract from the sheer joy of the game as a whole. As a carnival of all things video games, it's equal parts messy and spectacular, and varied enough to see it get plenty of mileage well into 2019. Certainly, I've missed plenty of games from 2018. I've skewed a little bit towards some technical reasoning for each as well. This is a digital Foundry video after all, but either way, these are the highlights I take away from the year, whether to show the evolution of games on Switch or Xbox One X, or just because I enjoyed them. But I'd be interested to hear what takes your fancy. What surprised you most? What was your most played? And which game had the most standout visuals? Let me know in the comments. In any case, I hope you've enjoyed watching this roundup as much as I did putting it together. It's been a great year covering tech and games, and there's plenty to look forward to as we start getting a glimpse at the next generation machines in 2019 and beyond. But in the meantime, if you did enjoy this retrospective look, feel free to like or subscribe, and remember to hit the bell to get notifications as soon as each video lands. And to get this at source file quality, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net. But from me for now, have a great holidays and a happy new year.